please welcome a nationally recognized advocate advancing economic opportunity and accelerating impact-driven programs for entrepreneurs across the country. Give a warm round of applause for President and CEO of your United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and Educational Fund, Ramiro A. Cavazos.
Good morning. Buenos dias. Welcome to Santa Fe, everyone. And for those of you that already live in New Mexico, you're so blessed. For those of you that came to see us, please enjoy and add to the local economy. I'm humbled to be here with you. I'm honored to work for a national organization whose focus it is to create wealth and prosperity. Our Latino community is our target audience. Doesn't mean that we do not include the rest of America. We do. In fact, we, as you all know, embrace and partner with many groups. And today is about partnerships. It's about the innovation this country is bringing to the energy industry as a leader in the world. I want to thank you all for joining us. Thank you for coming to this great city. Before I begin, I want to recognize the amazing singing voice of Sergeant Lydia Chavez of the New Mexico National Guard. Let's give her a round of applause. Send goosebumps up my back with that national anthem this morning. We want to thank her for her service, and to all of our veterans with us, thank you for your service. This is our 5th consecutive year. We've gathered here in Santa Fe, this time at a pivotal moment in our energy history and for the future, the 5 million Hispanic-owned businesses that we represent that have fueled the American economy, quite frankly, for more than 500 years, since the Spanish first arrived in North America, as I shared yesterday at the governor's mansion. It has been a catalyst for this great invention known as the United States of America and the free enterprise system that rewards competition and preparation meeting opportunity. And that's what today is about and tomorrow. Before I go any further, I want to thank and take a moment to honor a member of our extended U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, our family. The Japanese have a saying that when you drink the water, do not forget who dug the well. And we have many friends and partners that have come before us and leaders on our board. In particular, I want to thank one of our dear members who we lost recently, John Santoro, from the Albuquerque-based IT services company, Holman's USA. They are and have been members and sponsors. Join me in extending our condolences to his family and colleagues on the team. At the same time, the family is moving forward, and the new CEO, Carlos Garcia, is in place, and we look forward to deepening our important partnership with this wonderful company that is a leader, of course, not just in the energy industry, but in other categories of importance. The conversations we're going to have, well, let me take a pause. If you could join me in just having a moment of silence for John. He was a dear friend for many of us. Thank you so much. And thank you to the Holmans. The conversations we're going to have this week will do more than just shape energy policy. You all know that. We want to make sure to provide efficiency, to strengthen reliability, redundancy, create great jobs, create more business contracts for the full supply chain within the industry. Small businesses in particular are our bread and butter. So we want to take a look at the energy demand, and as it's changing, as we speak, we also want to increase the pressure on making sure that we find creativity and innovation at the top of the list to make sure that we can provide and continue to build our infrastructure for energy, since we are a global leader. We have regulators with us today, entrepreneurs. We have producers and, of course, downstream and upstream producers and folks that are consumers and advocates. So we are very honored to be inclusive of everyone at the United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Hispanic entrepreneurs, as I mentioned, are one of America's greatest untapped energy assets. These are businesses that generate close to $1 trillion annually. Since 2017, we've added 50% of the net new jobs across the country. Women of Hispanic descent are starting companies at 6 times the national rate. And so this sector will continue to grow, innovate. It's a young community, average age 28, 65 million, folks who have been here for 10 generations plus, and folks that are going through their immigration status to continue to be a part of the American dream. However, they receive less than 3% of contracts, yet represent about 10% of the economy in this industry. So our goal is to shrink that gap. If we shrank that gap, we would add another $2 trillion to the American economy. It's all about access to capital, access to information, and access to procurement and opportunity. So this summit is about turning those gaps into opportunity for you and your suppliers and the folks that you work with. Over the next few days, as I said, you'll hear from utility CEOs and innovators and many folks who are connecting to the energy industry with their own innovation and industry. You'll see how long-term capital planning, regulatory alignment, and discipline, a skill that is not an emotion, but the skill to make sure that we open new pathways for not just our Latino businesses, but for all businesses. So the charge for us at the United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, we ourselves, by the way, 1979, were founded here in Santa Fe, New Mexico. It was originally going to be Kansas City, 5 business owners, men and women, but at the time there was a blizzard in Kansas City, and they drove south, and they ended up in Santa Fe, like the original conquistadores that came here, but they founded this wonderful organization that is now a national network of more than 300 Hispanic chambers of commerce, 5 million Latino-owned businesses, and hundreds of Fortune 500 companies that together are creating the global economy that is led now by this great country of ours that means so much to us, along with the meaning of the national anthem for many of us who have fought to defend it. So we need to open up those procurement pipelines, invest in supplier development, and of course, we want us to be a part of your long-term strategy. We think it's an economic imperative. It's not something that is a handout. It's actually how can we partner and create more efficiency, because the future of America's energy will be built together by all of us, and we have a responsibility to build it together. So I just want to thank you all for being today. I want to thank, before I conclude, our leadership. We have a very dynamic board of directors from around the country. They're small business owners, corporate leaders, and Hispanic Chamber CEOs. Our board of directors is led by, and you heard, those of you that were with us at the Governor's Mansion, our chairwoman, Jackie Puente. We want to thank her. Let's give her a round of applause. Jackie, I don't know if you're here. Oh, there she is. Thank you, Jackie. She is just a wonderful person. When I met her in Philadelphia for the first time, she said, I'm going to be your best friend, whether you know it or not. And she has been my best friend and my confidant, and someone that also keeps us on track at the Chamber with her ideas and her creativity and just her own innovation. At the center of America's economy as a vice president for Comcast, in doing external affairs. So she's in the middle of that industry, which ties in so much to the energy industry. So Jackie, thank you, and thank you to every board member that's here with us today and across the country. If y'all could stand, our board members, I see a couple out there. Thank you. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you, Nelson, Betty. Betty kept me up late last night. Thank you, Betty. I also want to add a word of gratitude for our hardworking U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce team and our staff. Let's give them a round of applause. Muchísimas gracias. And a point of personal privilege, I'd like to ask all of us, I think my colleagues will agree, we want to thank profusely the dynamic and just super committed colleague, Synthia Jaramillo, who put this together. Synthia, are you here? There she is. Thank you, Synthia. So thank you for your meaningful work, Synthia, and the successful summit that you have led now for 5 years. So thank you so much, Synthia, for your sacrifices. At the same time, she's doing 20 other jobs. So thank you, Synthia, for everything She does. She was also my Uber driver the other day between here and Tesuque, and so thank you, Synthia. I'm still recovering from that trip, but I'm equally grateful to our partners and sponsors who helped make this Energy Summit possible. Your investment is just that. It's an investment in our future, in our community, to make sure that everyone's at the table, everyone wins. We could not do this without our sponsors, and I'd like to introduce recognize our platinum sponsors, Avangrid, Chevron, Natural Allies for a Clean Energy Future, gold sponsors, Dominion Energy, the economic development of the great state of New Mexico, ExxonMobil, MMR, Southwestern Power Group, and our silver sponsors, BP, American Petroleum Institute, Ambitions Consulting Group, Colonial Press, ConocoPhillips, Holman's USA, Shell, the Two River Economic Development Corporation, Vistra, and Xcel Energy. I know the folks from Tule are here. Let's raise your hand. I know we've got, I think, the whole board here, so thank you all so much for being here with us today. And I'm just honored to work for you at the United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. With that, at this time, I am just so honored to share my fleur-de-lis tie that I'm wearing in honor of Senator Landrieu. She is a true leader, a bipartisan leader who has spent her career at the intersection of energy, infrastructure, and economic opportunity. She is full of brains and grace, in my opinion. She's a former United States Senator and is now the co-chair of Natural Allies for a Clean Energy Future. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming to the podium the Honorable Mary Landrieu.
Well, good morning, and Ramiro, thank you so much. I have not been introduced in a while as a lady with grace. I am very happy. And once you hear me speak, you will wonder, why did he do that? I can get a little exercised at times, so I really appreciate that introduction. And it truly is wonderful to be back. I met so many of you last year, and for those of you that are new here and first year, I was so personally impressed with the conference, and not just the way that Synthia, thank you Synthia, organizes it to be so organized and on time and efficient, but more importantly to Ramiro and Jackie's leadership and the entire board, the spirit and the true dedication and the true integrity of the mission expressed by the leadership of the Hispanic Chamber. You know, when you spend your time in politics and in government, like I did most of my life, I was elected at 23, many years ago, to the House of Representatives in Louisiana, then served as state treasurer, and then ran for governor and lost. God had a better plan. I ended up in the United States Senate. I wanted to be governor. I think he said, well, I think I could use you better there. I don't know, but whatever happened, 18 years. But my whole life has been motivated by trying to make this country a more perfect union. That is a very big job, and it takes all of us to do our part. So when I showed up here, sort of, you know, kind of because Susan Waller, who I work with and for, Natural Allies, who lives here in Santa Fe, said, Mary, there's a great conference, we need to go, I want you to talk about Natural Allies. I really had been involved with the Hispanic Chamber, of course, as a United States Senator for many years, but was not completely aware of the way that the mission was articulated. So I'm all in. Natural Allies is here because we believe, and I believe as the leader of Natural Allies, that we are Natural Allies, that I am Natural Allies with everyone in this room that has a vision for a more perfect union. And this speech, or this talk that I'm going to give for hopefully the next 12 minutes, which is going to be hard for me to fit everything in that I want to say in 12 minutes, is really about that. It's not about a specific energy policy. It's not about the Democratic Party, the Republican Party. It's about building a stronger America, a better America, an America that can lead this world to greater prosperity and justice. And that starts, and that's why I want to get into this, and I want to thank all of you so much. That starts with really truly understanding the energy system of this country and the world. And that is the mission of Natural Allies. We want to help Democrats and Republicans, but primarily Democratic leaders who have tuned out with bumper sticker slogans like "leave it in the ground," like "don't build it here." We've had enough fossil fuels. Our job, my job as a former Democratic senator and longtime Democratic leader, along with Ruben Diaz, who's here, Bronx president from New York. I also just learned that he was elected when he was 24, so he has a story to tell you. Also, along with Terry McAuliffe, who's a former governor of Virginia and chair of the Democratic Party, Tim Ryan, who is a former congressman from Ohio, and others, Democratic leaders, to step out and say, oh no, that is not what we need to do. We need to be building the future, not leaving it in the ground. That's Natural Allies' mission. That's why we're here. And I'm going to run through some slides pretty quickly, which is really interesting since I normally don't use slides, but I'm going to pull up, if I can, the first, okay? This is our leadership team. And when Natural Allies approached me, I'll do this quickly, they said, Mary, Democrats don't seem to understand we actually really need all of the above, including natural gas, oil where we can, and some coal, but in addition, renewables, geothermal, nuclear, we need to innovate, we need all the above. I said, well, maybe we need new messengers. Let's send Democrats to talk to Democrats. So that's what we're doing. We're building a team. We have a national team, and we have state teams in Illinois, Pennsylvania, New York, Michigan, some of the key states, trying to help Democrats understand this issue better. Next, we have partners, and we hope, and I hope, and Jackie, I know you're leading this team from your perch as a leader at Comcast, which is one of the great companies of our world. We are reaching out beyond the oil and gas industry, and I know we have some great oil and gas and energy and renewable folks and nuclear folks in the room and geothermal folks, great. But we've been talking to each other too much, the industry. We need to talk to the National Association of Manufacturers. We need to talk about the restaurant associations. I cook on a gas stove. If somebody tries to take that away from me and the Cajuns in Louisiana, you all, we're going to be in a lot of trouble. So we reach out to so many different partners. And third-party partners, we think that when we send women business owners to the Capitol, some Democrats might not listen to me, but they might listen to the Hispanic women business leaders. They may listen to entrepreneurs that say, I am so tired of paying a high energy bill, and my products that I used to send or export, or my business that I'm trying to build, it's getting harder for me, and you better get this stuff out of the ground and get it going. All right, this is my favorite slide, and I'm going to stay on this for a few minutes, so bear with me. When I was a senator trying to process too much material, too much information on every subject in the world, and those of you that can understand it, I've worked with all your senators. Pete Domenici taught me a lot, spent 36 years in the Senate. He was one of my mentors. Tom Udall, phenomenal. Ambassador to New Zealand, phenomenal leader. Very similar we are, even though Pete was a Republican, as you all know, and Tom's a Democrat. We're centrist, and we work really hard together on this. I'm sorry Pete's gone, and I'm sorry Tom's no longer there, but nonetheless, and Martin Heinrich, too, and your Senator Lujan. This says everything we need to know about what's happened in the last 20 years. The darker states 20 years ago was how much coal was supporting the electric grid in the United States. We built our economy on coal. The Industrial Revolution. The GDP today is one of the greatest, it is the greatest in the world. It was built on fossil fuels. Energy is not just part of the sector, it is the fundamental sector. It's only 7% of the economy, but without energy, nothing else works. Not a hospital, not a school, not a petrochemical facility, not an automobile. Nothing moves, nothing works. And we have to start thinking as leaders, we are not talking about an issue. We are talking about the fundamental molecules and electrons that make everything we do every day possible. And I think we have all done a poor job of explaining this to our children in school. They have no clue, and probably there's some adults in this room that are like, I just turned the switch on, Mary, and honestly, I really don't know. And I understand that because we, leaders, have not done a good job. When we moved from coal 20 years ago to basically natural gas, fueling our system, lots of good things happened and some bad things happened. I'm not going to talk about the coal industry and what happened to them and the workers. My heart goes out for them because after they literally built the country, won the war, beat fascism, they were told, go home, sit down, we're going to retrain you to code. I don't even want to talk about what we did to the workers. But we had natural gas. Thank goodness. It is the greatest asset, one of the greatest assets this country has. And in a minute, I'm going to fast forward here. Well, let me finish this for a minute. We were able to move from coal to natural gas because we have the greatest natural gas pipeline system. We need more of it. We haven't built enough of it, but thank God we have it because most countries don't. Now, you'd never know this from people yelling at pipelines. We hate them. We don't like them. Well, they don't see them. They don't know them. I'm going to show you a slide. It's going to really push you back. I hope to see it. But everywhere you see sort of goldish color, that's natural gas. Now you see New Mexico, that's blue. The other states are blue that are more renewable. The same, but there's still some coal states. But do not believe that even in those blue states, they're almost all 50% or close to 50% natural gas. Why? Because natural gas is a firm, deliverable, dispatchable fuel that's cleaner than coal, 50% cleaner, which is why when we did this switch, you won't hear this either because we should be celebrating, we reduced emissions in this country by 33%. And natural gas was responsible for 60% of that reduction, and then our build out of renewables. But this is the key, and anybody that runs a utility can tell you this. If they have renewables on the grid, now think about this, coal is firm. It works in the day, it works at the night, it works on weekends. Coal is a workhorse, but it was dirty. So when you add renewables to the grid that only works with the sun, only works with the wind, you still have to have that dispatchable power. So we had it in America. Thank goodness we didn't stop permitting. Thank goodness for George Mitchell and those guys in Texas and in New Mexico. I heard about fracking last night in New Mexico, and we got the gas out of the ground, and we were able to answer the call, produce more energy, keep the lights on, and reduce emissions. And you know who did that? The natural gas industry. And we are happy as a natural gas industry to partner. Now I'm going to flip through these slides and get to this. I don't know how many of you have ever seen this slide, but you should memorize it. These are the natural gas pipelines in this country. And I want you to know something. You see how they go into Mexico? And you see how they go into Canada? This is one integrated grid. So when our president says he doesn't want to work with Mexico anymore or Canada, you might want to suggest that he look at this slide. This is how natural gas moves through our country. And this is what helps. This is the backbone. This is the superpower of the United States of America. This is why this country has the greatest and highest GPT in the, GPA, thank you, in the world. And it's because we can fund, not only build our electricity system, and we're happy to have renewables. We hope geothermal comes on board. We're excited about fusion, and the labs here in New Mexico and MIT have been working hard on that. We're excited about what the future brings, but I am so mad and so disappointed in leaders that want to say, just leave this in the ground, forget we ever built it, and we think we can run this great nation on wind and solar. It cannot happen. And even when you have batteries, we have batteries that last 4 hours. Maybe some genius will invent a battery where you can store the energy, which is what you have to do when you store it. You have too much sun, you need to store it until you don't have enough. That's fine. So I'm going to go back if I can. I'm not sure I can do this. Okay, so this is what happens when you have very bad policies. And this is why I need you guys, and I've got to end up in a minute here, why I need you guys to really understand this, because you have a lot of political power. The Hispanic community is 20% of the country and growing. You are very interesting kind of from a politician standpoint, because you move Republican and Democrat depending on the message. Politicians will come to you and ask you for your support. You want to say, what's your thinking on energy? Because it affects my business. It affects everything that I do. It affects my business, it affects my budget, it affects my family, it affects my ability to buy a home, it affects what is your policy. And if they don't say all of the above, abundance, we need everything, build it, and then help lower emissions as fast and as practically as we can, tell them thank you very much, I think I'll vote for someone else. This is what happens when you block things. California's electricity prices are 3 times higher than other states. They're like, Susan, you have to help me with these numbers here, but I'll get them to you all, but I'm going to say like 51 cents a kilowatt hour. Texas and New Mexico, Texas, Louisiana, we're lower. We're like 17 a kilowatt hour. Do you see New England? The reason that we're having problems in New England is because they've stopped almost every major pipeline into New England. Susan Waller was the last person to ever build a pipeline before Mountain Valley Pipeline just got passed by. It took an act of Congress to get Mountain Valley Pipeline. So when you say electricity prices are high, be clear. I know they're going up a little bit in every state. I'll talk about why in a minute. But the real problem is in the Northeast and in California because they've blocked. Now I want to go back and just clarify one thing if I can. Okay, you see the little light blue? I want to point this out. The light blue is hydro. And in the northwest of the United States, they have a lot of water and they have a lot of rivers. And they've been able to run their electricity system on hydro. I like hydro, most people do. It works, it's cheaper, it's renewable. Of course, some people don't like dams because it hurts the fish. I understand that, but they're trade-offs. But going back, so I just wanted to point that out. But other than the Northwest that has hydro, everybody else is going to need to figure this out. And we're saying at Natural Allies, let's use our natural gas resources, let's build, stop fighting, and work together to build the kind of economy we need. So that is my message. I could go on. I have a lot more to share with you guys, but I honestly don't have the time, other than to just share with you this last in closing. That just last week, my former leaders, Chuck Schumer, and your Senator, Martin Heinrich, and Whitehouse. Thank you, Susan. Senator Whitehouse is ranking on EPA. Your senator's ranking on energy, which is why he's important. Schumer's a leader. They sent out a tweet. You can look at this. It's all over social media, basically blaming high prices on natural gas. High prices, natural gas, we're exporting it. We have a lot more to export. Europe is surviving right now and not going into darkness and depression because of the gas that you guys are sending from New Mexico to us, and we're exporting it. We're now the largest exporter and largest producer of natural gas. We have enough for all of us. We have enough for our allies around the world. It is a national security issue, and I want to close with this. That graph that I showed you about we were coal and now we're natural gas, and we're going to be more natural gas and renewables, natural gas and other things. But the other thing that's happened, I'm going to close with this. In light of all of this challenge, how do we keep rates low? How do we keep it reliable? How do we lower our emissions? The other thing that's happening to us, which is exciting, but it's challenging, and it's going to take our best efforts. For the first time in 20 years, the demand for electricity is increasing substantially. That 20 years that I showed you was flat. It was like 2% every year. But now it's going up to 5 and 7%. So we must meet this challenge. We must use everything we have to power the future for our children. We have got to stop this incessant fighting between the Democrats and the Republicans. Trump deep-sixing renewables, Biden, shutting down liquefied natural gas, even when Russia attacked the Ukraine, which was one of the dumbest things I've ever seen in my life. We must use everything the United States has, trust our people, to get these emissions down. We know how to do it. We cannot cut our nose to spite our face. Data centers will pay their way. Our scientists will figure it out. Our engineers know what to do, and our politicians need to listen. Thank you. And if Jim Kerr will come up, I think Jim is coming up. Now, Jim Kerr is going to tell you the real truth. Let's welcome him.
Hey.
Jim, good to see you.
Great job. Right. There's nothing left for me to cover.
Jim, you're a sponsor of this event. Jim's heard me speak several times before, so this is not new to Jim. And Jim and Southern Company were early sponsors of Natural Allies, so I wanted to start, I really could have talked for another 30 or 40 minutes on this subject. It's a lot to cover in a short time, Jim, but tell us why you and Southern Company, you've been doing this a long time, why you joined Natural Allies, why you think our message is either unique or different. If it's not, tell us. I mean, be honest. And do you think we're actually making any progress?
Let me answer the easy part first. Yes, we're making great progress. I think being here, having the folks that will be at this event and events like this, and you guys are working so hard, and you've outlined the team that you've put together. But, I think for a lot of the reasons that you've covered, but I would say it a little bit different. I'm a 5th, 6th, 7th generation Democrat, most of those politicians of some sort back in North Carolina. And it's funny, you mentioned Senator Domenici, and early in my career, I had the pleasure of working with 2 chairs of Senate ENR committee, both from New Mexico, both from different parties, and they were both fantastic, Jeff Bingaman and Senator Domenici before him. And I think they represented a time where energy policy in our country was largely geopolitical, not partisan political. And you had production states, and you mentioned the hydro in the Northwest and Southeast, where I hail from. We burned a lot of coal, but it was really more about abundance and supply. And unfortunately, the natural gas network, pipeline network, was largely built out during that era. And sometime 15, 20 years ago, maybe 15 years ago, energy policy became sort of partisan. And unfortunately, as a Democrat, it pains me to, as you mentioned, I think we became very focused on the environmental attributes to the detriment of other attributes. And what we try to do at Southern Company, what I tried to do when I was a state regulator in North Carolina, there are really 4 elements of energy policy and energy businesses. You want it to be as clean as it can be, you want it to be as safe as it can be, you want it to be affordable, and you want it to be reliable. But the physics and the engineering of the matter mean you can't solve for one of those attributes. It's like 4 legs on a stool, and if all you care about is the environmental attributes, the stool's going to be out of balance, and that's really a lot of the facts you just gave. So I think Natural Allies was the right organization at the right time to come in and really, and the other thing about the energy business, you can want it to be different, but it's always bounded by the laws of physics and economics. And so I think having public officials Democratic public officials out working with traditional Democratic communities of interest like the Hispanic Chamber, other groups, to really have a fact-based conversation about the importance of energy in all of our lives and in all of our communities, and the need for us to take a balanced approach of clean, safe, affordable, reliable. And as you said, most of the emissions reductions this country has made in the last 10 or 15 years has been the switch from coal to natural gas. So really natural gas has been the enabler of, and the U.S., by the way, has led the world in carbon dioxide reductions, but it's been because of the availability of natural gas. So I think Natural Allies is an effective communication tool or organization to effectively communicate to communities that I think, and it's on the Democratic side, where we probably had lost that balanced approach of clean, safe, affordable, and reliable, and quit over-solving for just purely that we're going to electrify everything, and they're going to be all green electrons, and we're going to put tons of federal money out there, and we're going to invest in all these technologies. Look, the other thing, and you mentioned load growth, I would just say, we need it all now. I mean, we have a tremendous opportunity, and it's not just data centers. You hear a lot about that, but it's reshoring of manufacturing post-COVID, shortening supply chains. It's just general economic prosperity of small businesses, and a lot of folks represented by the chamber here. We have a lot of demand. We have room for all of the above. We need renewables. They have a role to play, but they also, as you said, they're not dispatchable. They're not 24/7 base load power. So we really need to move back. I call it sort of an era of abundance. And I want to go back to where I said, Senator Domenici, Senator Bingaman, they were about building infrastructure that has really enabled the lifestyle and the economy of this country. And we had gotten away from that. And I think having a democratically focused organization that is getting us back to that time where we're more geopolitical. What resources work in this region? What's the cheapest? What's the most relatively clean resource? That balanced approach is getting us back to really where, when I was a young man in this business a long time ago, you had leadership from New Mexico that really took that approach.
Well, and I'm so glad you brought that up, and I'm sorry I missed Senator Bingaman, who served beautifully for many years, but I'm so glad you said that, because it was a great example of a Republican and a Democrat, both on the committee, working together. In fact, the last 50 years, because I chaired that committee as well, for you all, just FYI, for New Mexico, the last 50 years, the United States Senate energy policy has been driven by the leadership of New Mexico, Alaska, and Louisiana. There's a reason that we end up in the leadership of that committee, because we know from Alaska, Louisiana, and New Mexico the truth about energy and how important it is. And in New Mexico, you all know this, for those of you from New Mexico, I think 60% of the entire budget of New Mexico comes from revenues generated from oil and gas. So why would anybody be campaigning for any office in New Mexico if they're against oil and gas? It makes no sense. And it eventually, some new technology, so let's move to nuclear. We have about 92, 93 nuclear, large nuclear. Both parties have come, operating today. We have a president and Democrats and Republicans that have sort of come together after 30-year hiatus to come together on nuclear. You all just built, right? The first new nuclear plant in the country.
In 30 years, and so it's not easy to do.
Not easy to do. Let's talk for 45 seconds. What did you learn? Can others do it? Is it too expensive? And what did your ratepayers say about that?
Well, it is very capital intensive. It is it takes a long time. It's labor intensive. Once you have them built and operating, the dispatch cost is relatively low, the marginal dispatch cost. They run 24/7. They are the best base load. They are environmentally benign. The fuel is really not an issue in that regard. So they are good to have. They are just hard to do, and frankly, very few parts of the country have the market structure we do in the Southeast. We're vertically integrated. We're sort of fully regulated from generation through distribution. But a lot of the country, about half the country, is in organized markets where there's no price signal. There's no stable cost recovery, if you will. So nuclear is important. It can be part of a dominant solution. They're looking at small modular reactors. It's going to take a ton of support from the federal government. almost in every aspect of the project to get this done again. I think we will be the last. Look, it is an option out there, but it is not as readily obtainable as using gas combined cycle generation as base load. And so we're largely, it's funny, all of the above. So my company, Southern Company, we've got about total of about 9 to 10 million customers. We're an electric company. I run the gas part of the business. We've got solar, wind, battery storage, we distributed generation. We do about everything. We're probably the largest vertically integrated utility in the country. And so and again, my point, clean, safe, affordable, reliable. The fact of the matter is last year, 74% of all the energy we delivered to about 9 or 10 million customers, depending on how you count, was derived from natural gas. And so we're making that rational decision every day of how to meet the demand of our customers. And natural gas is the dominant solution. And I think that's true for the whole country right now.
But there are regions of the country, you all know, that shut down their nuclear plants.
Yeah.
They shut down their natural gas or will not do any more natural gas pipelines, not enlarging the ones that are already under the ground or building new ones. And then they wonder why they have a shortage.
Yeah.
And they wonder why the price spikes, and then they blame the utilities when they're having to buy gas from a spot market. You know, when you buy anything from a spot market, like you're desperate for it, you'll pay anything for it, you gotta have it. You should have like gone to Walgreens to get the medicine that you needed, you know,
Absolutely.
And paid the normal price. But oh no, you were trying to save some money. So now, you know, it's a shortage, you have to pay. That's the same way this works. So I know it's hard for everybody that's not in the business, and I wasn't in the business. I've never been in the energy business, but I'm in the Make America, you know, the best it can possibly be business. And it frustrates me that we can't get this right. But you guys, and I'm going to close with this, you guys in this room, this particular Chamber of Commerce has a voice, you have power, and if you gain the knowledge and you can go in and speak respectfully to the left and the right and say, we want better. And we can balance this instead of whipping from the left to the right, which we've been doing. When Democrats get in the White House, they push, you know, all the fossil fuels out. Then Republicans get in, they push all the renewables out. How in the heck are we going to build an economy for our children with that nonsense?
Yeah,
How? I mean, how are we going to do it?
Yeah.
And so what we have to say is, we want durable energy policy, and we want the Democrats and the Republicans in Congress. You all are elected more than 8 years. You know, you can serve a long time. We want durable policy. And I think if we ask and we're knowledgeable about what we're asking, we should be able to get it. And it's about time, and we can still reduce emissions. So last words.
Yeah, I think we're going to hear a lot about affordability here in the midterms, and I just want to say this about natural gas. We produce about, well, on peak, so I serve Illinois, on peak we produce about 6 times as much energy for about 4 times the cost as the local electric grid in northern Illinois. Households, we're about 1.1% of median household income nationally, natural gas use. But for that 1.1%, people meet 64% of their energy needs for space heating, for you know, whatever they need the energy for. So if you care about affordability, which I think we're all going to hear the term affordability till we're sick of it, natural gas is the dominant solution to balance the energy needs for this growing economy and for households. It's not just about the big economy, it's the local, it's the households, doing it as cost effectively, as cleanly, as reliably as is possible. Natural gas is a dominant solution. And that's just the facts of the matter. It's not an opinion. And we need y'all's help and y'all's support in carrying that message.
And we're going to wrap this up, but I want to invite you all. I would be remiss, and Ramiro, thank you for wearing your fleur-de-lis tie, because we are hosting, because I was so impressed with this conference in New Mexico, and frankly a little jealous, Synthia, that you all were here in Santa Fe. So we're going to host a fall conference, Hispanic conference on energy in New Orleans this fall in October. So be there or be square. It's going to be great. Thank you all.
Thank you to Honorable Mary Landrieu and Mr. Kerr for your insightful discussion. Now, please welcome a driving force behind strategic partnerships and national dialogue on energy and economic development, Chief Growth and Partnerships Officer for the United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, Synthia Jaramillo.
Hello. Good morning. It's not afternoon yet. Good morning, everyone. Our next conversation is very timely. The next conversation that we are inviting on stage will truly get to the heart of what so many families, workers, and small businesses are feeling across this country every single day. We will be talking about energy affordability. When energy goes up, everything else gets tighter. It hits my family budget, it hits your family budget. It affects whether a small business can hire, expand, or simply hold the line. It shapes the cost of doing business, the cost of living, and the ability of a community, not just in New Mexico, but across this country, to really thrive. So this is not a side issue. This is a kitchen table issue for so many families. This is a Main Street issue, and it is absolutely an economic mobility issue. At the United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, we believe that if we are serious about economic opportunity, we have to be serious about affordability. Because when families are spending more just to keep the lights on, cool their homes, fill their tank, and manage basic bills and education and long-term stability. And when it comes to small businesses, I don't know how many small businesses are in the room. We have quite a few. For small businesses, especially Hispanic-owned businesses and other entrepreneurs trying to grow, affordability can be different between staying afloat and scaling up. We just had a graduation with suppliers who exited a cohort in partnership with Blue Wave, our Avanzando Supplier Development program. And affordability will be a challenge for these companies, these startups, small businesses. That is why the conversation matters so much to us at the USHCC. And it is why this panel is so timely. As our energy economy continues to evolve, we have to keep asking a very practical question. How do we make sure the future we are building is one that people can actually afford? We are especially grateful to Natural Allies for a Clean Energy Future for presenting this panel this morning and for helping to elevate a conversation that is grounded in bipartisan and focused on real-world outcomes. And we have an outstanding panel who is going to lead this conversation. Our moderator is Katie Wonnenberg, principal at Public-Private Strategies. She is joined by Jose Antonio Miranda, CEO of Avangrid, Neil Brown, managing director at the Progressive Policy Institute, and Ruben Diaz Jr., New York chapter co-chair for Natural Allies for a Clean Energy Future. Please join me on stage.
Well, good morning, everyone. And Synthia, thank you so much for setting up this panel discussion. Just by a raise of hands, and I know many of you are in the energy sector, but over the last couple of weeks or months, how many of you have had maybe at a cocktail party or in line at school pickup a conversation about the cost of energy? Has someone showed you their energy bill or said, hey, what's going on with energy? Show of hands. Exactly. And so I am so excited to have this conversation with Jose Antonio, Neil Brown, and Ruben Diaz. We have a great group here with a perspective across research, industry, and community leadership, which is exactly what we need to have a well-rounded conversation. We'll focus on what's working, what's not, and where there are real opportunities to make progress, including on a bipartisan basis. So we're going to jump right in. We're a little behind schedule. I'm going to try to catch us up, but I know we're going to have a great conversation. So I'm going to turn to Neil, and I know that many of you last year who were here know that Neil was doing some amazing research on just affordability writ large, but also was working on some really important data that was focusing on Hispanic households. And so Neil, in some recent PPI research at the intersection of energy, cost, infrastructure, and the cost of living, what were some of the key takeaways on which policymakers and business leaders understand about how energy affordability is impacting economic mobility right now, and particularly your research on Hispanic households and small businesses?
Oh, thanks, Katie. Yeah, this is incredibly important right now, and I want to take just a moment to thank the Hispanic Chamber for inviting me back again. I was here last year. We had just released a study that we'd done looking at every congressional Black caucus district, and I promised everyone that we would have our Congressional Hispanic Caucus study out this year, and it's here. And I believe it is on one of the tables here with the water. If you want to grab a copy, we have one in Spanish, one in English. And if we need more, happy to get those to you. Yeah, look, no surprise to anybody here. Folks across the country these last couple of months have probably seen their highest energy bills of their entire lives. Now, not a big stretch to figure out what that means to businesses, both directly in paying their energy bills for the business, but also their customer base. If everyone is, large swaths of the population are having to choose between food, medicines, and paying their utility bills, there's not disposable income. And we're finding in these studies, when we look at vulnerable communities and big cities particularly, these are life-threatening problems in some cases. So, it affects workers, it affects customers, it affects businesses. We've got to find a way to rectify or find a way to have affordability play into this decision on how to permit, how to build the things that we need to get the energy that we need to supply both businesses and consumers. And that's a big policy challenge that we have, and getting policymakers to pay attention to that.
Jose Antonio, I'm going to turn to you as someone who has worked in this space around the globe, Asia, South America. What are some of the biggest drivers of energy costs today? And I mean, absent of the fact that we are seeing a global conflict drive up energy costs. And in fact, I know that the Secretary of Energy is actually testifying right now in front of Congress. And already his testimony that was leaked says that he doesn't anticipate seeing gasoline prices drop below $3 a gallon until next year. What do you really think can be done in the near term to keep energy both affordable and reliable? And maybe if I can add in like a second question, I mean, this is really a global problem. And where do you see industry, governments really working together to kind of address that reliability, affordability problem?
Yeah, thank you. Great question. And of course, first of all, thank you to the Chamber of Commerce to invite us today to this great city. Un placer estar con ustedes. Our company, Avangrid, is serving 100 million customers. Well, in the Iberdrola company is serving 100 million customers around the globe. And here in the US, we are serving more than 3 million customers. Wow. And of course, we feel affordability as a pressing issue, right? Because we understand the difficult choices that you are talking about when the bill comes, no? Yeah. But we have to say that affordability has to be understood in many ways. First of all, the electric system is in the veins of everything we do in the economy. Without electricity, it's impossible to do anything else. And growth and the cost of opportunity for not being able to keep up with growth is also part of the affordability. Many developers, housing developers, they are knocking on our door saying that they need to build affordable housing, for example. They can't because there is no power available. That is affordability as well, no? In the sense of what are the drivers of the cost in the electric bill, this is, first of all, is a blessed country. As we heard before, we have all types of energy in the US. Europe is different. In Europe, we don't have gas, for example. It's a big problem. China, they don't have gas. It's a big problem, okay? But here in the US, we have everything. And we have everything in different states. We have different things. In the north, we have gas. In the northwest, we have hydro. In the south, we have sun and solar. So in each place, in the northeast, we have wind for offshore. It's also a very great sourcing of energy. So the first thing that we can do to be affordable is to tap on the energy resource that is really available in each of the different states in our country, and not to be driven by political reasoning on hydro is not good, or wind is not good, or gas is not good. No, sorry. If you have gas available, use it. If you have wind available, use it, right? So this is the first thing that we can do in the short term, no? But also that is very important, and we try to explain to the regulators and to the stakeholders, is that in order to lower the bill, you need to grow the customer base. Is the only way. You need to grow the system. Yeah. What is one of the most important and pressing bottlenecks now to grow the system is the grid. The grid is being underinvested for many, many years now. I mean, that is not controversial. Both sides of the aisle, they recognize that the grid is underinvested. But they are unable to push the investment. And there is a wrong understanding of affordability as trying to just lower the rates that the regulated utilities are getting. And again, they are regulated. They don't decide how much to invest. They don't decide how much to spend. They are told. And the only thing they do is to put the money to work. Is the only thing they do, right? Yeah. So just responding to your question, two things that we can do in the short term. First, use all of the above. Use the resource that you have in your backyard. Don't just deny the usage for political reasons. And second, invest a lot in the grid, because the grid is the enabler for more generation to come and to be able to lower the bill.
Follow-up question before I hop over to Ruben. In that sense of the fact that we are a blessed country, that we have so many resources and opportunities, I mean, do you think that if the U.S. is able to deploy effectively all those resources, we can actually be a leader for the world? I mean, as you travel, Jose Antonio, around, the way that we can be effectively to deploy all those resources could be a model for the rest of the world?
Well, we are leaders.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that if you compare, we talk about affordability in our bill here in the U.S., but if you compare, Europe is paying much more for the energy that we pay in the U.S. We are leaders in the world, no doubt. And many things that we do, they try to be copied in Europe. The tax credits, in order to incentivize more and more renewable energy, is a clear model that Europe is looking to. Yeah.
Well, Ruben, I'm going to throw it to you. So you're in the Bronx, you're in the community, you're talking with households and small businesses. Can you explain, and I know many of you in this room know this, how do these energy costs, these rising energy costs, really show up in the lives of Hispanic entrepreneurs and working families? And what are you hearing from communities? I mean, I know that Jose Antonio just talks about that we are a country that is rich in abundance in energy, but it's not being felt by our households and our small businesses. And what are you trying to do through Natural Allies, but also in your community to lower those costs?
Well, first of all, I just want to say that I'm ecstatic to be here. I want to thank the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. I bring you all greetings from New York City, namely the Boogie Down Bronx, the birthplace of hip-hop, El Condado de la Salsa. I'm here with my brother Sammy, and we're having a great time. What I represent, I am not an expert on energy. And shout out to Susan for bringing me on as co-chair in New York State. What I represent is a former elected official who represents a part of the city where for too long there's always been this adversarial, contentious relationship between power production and power plants and the community. And when you speak now of New York City and all around the United States, the zeitgeist is that of affordability. And what I represent is an elected official, a former elected official, many of my colleagues in government now, there's a cognitive dissonance. And we are trying to wrestle with the fact that, yes, we are environmentalists, but at the same time, we want to make sure that we keep things more and more affordable for our community. So, Katie, to answer your question, what that means like in parts of the Bronx and parts of New York City and New York State, namely in black and brown communities with black and brown small business owners, is that when New York City is facing a flu or cold economically, our communities has pneumonia. And when you look at a small business owner, they already have fines from all different types of regulations. They've already experiencing high rents, commercial rents. When you look at many of the small businesses, they're not just restaurant owners. Those restaurant owners, however, are having to wrestle with the fact, do I keep this extra employee because of my energy costs have gone up? Do I raise the prices and lose customers to something else? Many of the small business owners, believe it or not, they are people who are landlords. They own 2, 3, even more family units. And so they have high insurance premiums already. They have repairs. And so when you look at the fact that if we reduce their options, and if we don't have an all-of-the-above approach in New York State, I don't know about other states, I'm learning that. Neil has been giving me crash course on energy all over the United States. But in New York City, if we do not have an all-of-the-above approach, if we do not support Governor Kathy Hochul's pause on our 2030 CLCPA legislation, then we're really going to face an economic crisis, especially in our communities, and people are starting to get that. As we go around, as we do a lot of these panels throughout the city, we've been going to Baptist ministers and the New York Hispanic clergy organizations and all over, and small businesses. They're starting to see that when you speak of energy, that's no longer theoretical. That's no longer something that they see on television. That's no longer something for the experts or for those that are producing the energy. It's hitting their pockets, and we have to do something now because the infrastructure they're realizing for renewables is not going to be ready in 2030. When we were talking about legislation years ago, 2030 seems so far into the distant future, and now it's right around the corner, and so we have to do something.
I mean, Ruben, just to, I guess, as the kids say, like double tap on that, I think that we've had a lot of conversations around the country with business owners and lawmakers that, 15 years ago that we're talking about 2030 and felt like it was so long ago. And you can't predict the future. You can't know that we were going to potentially see this energy crisis that we're in the middle of, or understand, the boom of data centers and how that was going to impact the grid. And so I know that you just talked about perhaps supporting the governor's pause on the 2030 energy plan. Are there other things that you think maybe in the state of New York, or as you and Neil have talked about, other policies across the country that you think would help energy policy bloom in the U.S. that you're excited about? And I'll throw this to Neil as well, that you'd like to share with this audience that you're excited about.
Yeah, I think, and Neil, I'm sorry, but I know that there's a lot of policy going around, but we have to play politics. And we have to allow for those elected officials that I speak of, that are great friends of mine, to understand. We have to give them a safe space. Energy production and environmental protection do not have to be inherently in opposition to each other. You don't have to give up your environmental creds to support natural gas. You don't have to, if you fought against a power plant 15 years ago, that's because that power plant back in the days was not the cleanest. But the technology has changed. And so what we're doing with Natural Allies in New York State is that we're starting to percolate the ground. We're starting, and the senator mentioned earlier, not to take away her gas stove. That in and of itself is a political issue right there in many Latino and minority communities, where they're saying, don't take away how I cook my traditional cultural meals. Yeah. That's something that's significant. And so if we start to bridge that gap, and that's what we're doing here, I believe that that's been my purpose in New York State, and I want to continue to do that throughout the United States. We start doing that. We would allow for many of the environmental elected officials that cover to say, look, we're not giving up our creds, but we need to make sure that we do this in a fashion where we're not hurting the people that we so proudly represent.
Neil, I'd love to kick back to you.
Yeah, so we look a lot at the kind of political viability of, policies to reduce emissions. Democrats run the risk of being associated with taking your gas stove away, with raising prices through insisting on very, technology-specific, you have to have this many gigawatts of wind by this date. You have to get rid of, all of your natural gas generation by this date. Democrat, that's an unsustainable position politically for Democrats. And what we see is when, I believe in large part in the last election, we saw a pushback. We have a Trump administration now who's enacting its own sort of, what we like to call an advocacy tax. He's advocating against wind and solar policies, creating a ton of friction there for investment and clean energy build-out, which we need. The Democrats, on the other hand, creating a lot of friction to get rid of fossil fuels as fast as possible, to hold on to outdated permitting. Just a quick anecdote from our paper, or a couple of them. We looked at Chelsea, in a neighborhood in Boston. There was a substation that was permitted in 2014. This was infrastructure to help build out the reliability of the grid in that neighborhood, protect from brownouts and blackouts. Environmentalists opposed this, made it drag on till it couldn't be permitted. What that does, it locks in old technology, more polluting technology. This substation didn't have any emissions whatsoever. No carbon emissions, no pollution, merely a grid upgrade. But the environmental activists there said it was this infrastructure burden on the community. But what it ended up doing is creating more pollution, more expensive, and less reliable electricity in there. We looked at Los Angeles, another example of where permitting is just out of hand. Forgive my Spanish, but there's a bus stop there that they had, La Sombrita.
Yeah, there you go.
Right? Thank you. Practice for hours. But it's a bus stop in a Hispanic neighborhood, and it's supposed to be a shelter when it gets pretty hot there in Los Angeles. If you have a chance, look up La Sombrita bus stop on the internet. You'll see pictures of this. It's this little perforated piece of metal that sticks up and has a shade, if it's past noon, of about 3 feet on the ground. It's the only thing that they could get permitted. It's these sorts of issues, not just in the utility world, but this is all across the country, especially in places like Los Angeles and Boston, where environmental activists are enacting attacks on every citizen there and just adhering to these kind of outdated permitting and regulatory structures. That obstruction is the goal. Yeah. We need to be building things. Everybody, that's what's going to make energy affordable. So policymakers need to hear from all your businesses, from all of your community, to get beyond any partisan issues they have. If they don't like wind, like you said, everybody's picking their favorite fuel and making everybody else's fuel evil. We need to embrace all of them and build them all out so that we can get the energy we need to run our businesses and serve our communities.
And Jose, Antonio, both Ruben and Neil just teed you up. I mean, Ruben was talking about innovation that has happened. A lot has transpired in 20 years where perhaps, nuclear or power plants were not the cleanest, but tons of research and innovation has happened. Neil is talking about where we're at today. Where do you think the private sector has accelerated that innovation? And where are you most excited about where that growth has happened and where you see it?
Maybe a little perspective, because I've been in the energy business for 25 years of my life. And 15 years ago, I was in panels, and at that time, everyone was saying, no, solar is not going to be successful from the affordability point of view ever. Now is the cheapest source of energy. Yeah. So things change. And little by little, we don't realize it's a transition, but they do change. Yeah. Okay. And still we need gas. Gas is a wonderful bridge on this transition because it's firming up the energy that we need. But the reality is that we saw in the map just a few minutes ago how years ago someone died. Everything was running on coal, right? Then oil, and now more renewables is coming. And it's unstoppable. And the reality is that in 15, 20 years from now, wind, solar, and gas are the trio and the trifecta that are going to allow us to navigate our energy needs. Battery storage, little by little, is starting to be, as solar was 15, 20 years ago, starting to be a solution that probably in 20 years or so is going to be displacing gas, okay? And it's going to be the firming of the system. But still, we need the transition. We need all of the above. So I think that we all agree on that. And our company is doing wonderful projects that are transformational. As we speak, we are now finishing 800 megawatt offshore wind farm off the coast of Massachusetts, bringing very affordable electricity, clean and affordable, to Massachusetts. We just a few months ago inaugurated a huge transmission line connecting hydro resources in Quebec with ISO New England, also very affordable. So I think that we can do everything. We can be affordable, we can be clean, we need gas as well, okay? And our company is delighted on being part of the solution.
Well, as we celebrate the 250th anniversary of our country, I do think that sentiment of we can do everything is very powerful. We are wrapping up our time, so I want to thank Ruben, Neil, and Jose Antonio for the conversation. I think we could talk forever, but I think the takeaways is change is constant. And I think to Neil's point, we put these arbitrary deadlines on things, and that actually hinders change. We need to actually be advancing this idea of all of the above and making sure that we allow that innovation to happen and we allow new things to come into the market. Who would have known, to the point that I think you just made, that 15 years ago that we would think that solar would be actually one of the most efficient energy sources, and that we're blessed that we actually can deploy an all of the above energy strategy in this country. But I also want to say, and just double down, I think, to what Ruben said, is that we are talking about energy affordability today. It's a hot topic, but for our Black and brown communities, this is a crisis that they started experiencing not months ago, but years ago. Right. And we need to be much more, I think, reactive or aware of what is happening, because those are the communities that are building our businesses, they're hiring the people, they are innovating the fastest, and if we're not responsive to what they are experiencing, we are actually doing them a disservice. And so I hope that all of us feel a call to action to make sure that we're supporting our Hispanic entrepreneurs, our Hispanic communities, and making sure that they can be successful and achieve economic mobility and what makes this country great. So with that, I want to thank the three of you for this conversation. I know we could continue on, and thank you all for the great participation. Thank you all. Okay, good.
Now, please welcome our featured speaker, a leader representing one of the nation's largest energy companies, Senior Manager, State Government Affairs at Chevron, Mr. Patrick Killen.
Good morning, everyone. It's great to be here with the United States Hispanic Chamber of Commerce and such a strong group of leaders and partners. Chevron truly values our partnership with USHCC because of our shared focus on opportunity, entrepreneurship, and long-term economic growth in the communities where we operate. This relationship helps us connect more with businesses, ideas, and leaders who strengthen not just our company, but also the broader economy. At Chevron, we are committed strongly to a diverse and inclusive supply chain, one that reflects the communities where we live and work. And that commitment at Chevron is grounded in a simple belief. Just as a diverse workforce makes us stronger, a diverse supply chain contributes to innovation, resilience, and long-term success, while supporting our goals to protect the environment, empower people, and get results the right way. Chevron works to expand outreach to businesses of all types, including small businesses and those owned by women, minorities, veterans, individuals with disabilities, and members of the LGBTQ+ community. In places like New Mexico and across the country, these partnerships help strengthen local economies, create jobs, and support long-term community resilience. And that brings us to today's panel discussion on lower carbon oil and gas, practical pathways that protect reliability and competitiveness. This conversation is especially timely as we work to balance growing energy demand, emissions reductions needs, and economic competitiveness, while also keeping energy affordable, reliable, and ever cleaner. As I share a bit about our moderator and panelists today, please join me in a round of applause as we welcome them to the stage. So we're very fortunate today to have an outstanding moderator for this discussion, Heather Philpo. Heather brings nearly 2 decades of experience at the intersection of public affairs, advocacy, and data-driven strategy. As president of political and public affairs at Moore, she leads innovation and growth while helping organizations navigate complex policy environments. Heather is also a recognized thought leader, a frequent speaker on technology and politics, and importantly for us today, a proud New Mexican. And as an aside, I've personally known Heather for over 20 years, and I'm very proud to call her my friend. Joining us as panelists today are Hugo Gutierrez from Coterra Energy and Megan Fierro-Abela from Chevron. First, Hugo is Government and External Affairs Manager at Coterra Energy. He leads policy, lobbying, and political engagement for Coterra in New Mexico and Texas, and brings more than 25 years of experience in government affairs across multiple states and at the federal level. His background, including decades in the energy sector, gives him a practical perspective on how policy decisions impact competitiveness and reliability. And joining him is my colleague, Megan, from Chevron, Director for Chevron's New Mexico region. Megan leads Chevron's operations in New Mexico, on the New Mexico side of the Permian Basin, and brings more than 20 years of experience across deep water, technology development, and emerging energy solutions. As a native New Mexican with deep roots in the Mesilla Valley in the southern part of our state, Megan understands both the technical and community dimensions of energy development in the land of enchantment. And so with that, I will turn things over to Heather.
Thank you, Patrick. Well, good morning and welcome. We're very excited to be with all of you. So our goal today is to keep this conversation grounded in what is real and actionable right now. How is the industry advancing lower carbon outcomes in oil and gas in ways that are practical, financeable, and executable without losing sight of reliability, affordability, and competitiveness? We want to move past the talking points and focus on what is actually happening, where investment is going, how operations are improving, and how leaders in the sector are thinking about what success means in the next 5 years. And part of that conversation is increasingly about having better data, better visibility, so companies can make smarter operational and investment decisions. So to start, let's level set, and let's frame the central challenge for the whole panel. There are multiple lower carbon pathways competing for capital and attention, but companies still have to protect reliability and competitiveness. So let's begin with how the sector should think about prioritization. So I want each of you to weigh in on this. With methane reduction, operational efficiency, electrification, and carbon capture all competing for attention and not all equally ready or cost-effective, how should the sector prioritize investment today to protect reliability and competitiveness? Hugo, why don't we start with you?
I thought she was going to start first. Good morning, everybody, and it's good to be here, and thank you for the opportunity. It's good to be in a room full of energy enthusiasts, so that's pretty cool in Santa Fe. At Coterra, so I think the best way for me to frame this is I've been lobbying here in New Mexico since 1999, and when I first started coming up here, flying in from Houston, going into the Capitol, going to the New Mexico Oil and Gas Association meetings. That was back then, it was we've had an industry in New Mexico for years, but it was a dying industry back then. And we were largely managing a shrinking production base. And then fast forward to 2017 and 2018 when Susana Martinez was the governor. And then suddenly we started applying technologies that we got good at in horizontal drilling that we learned to do well in South Texas and North Dakota, and we came and applied that to the Permian Basin. And so suddenly, toward the end of Governor Martinez's term in her 8 years, we started to see the productions go back and start to increase. And then when Governor Lujan was elected in 2019, One of her first things that she did is she signed an executive order directing MNERD, the Energy Mineral, the regulatory agency for OCD, for the oil industry, and directing NMED to write rules around methane waste and prevention, and also a secondary rule around precursor and emissions, and actually setting emission standards for equipment, and to have flyovers and leak detection equipment. And so she instigated that, and with that executive order. And so it's taken several years to implement those rules. And so now we find ourselves in 2026, and the methane rule is going to require every operator in the state to capture 98% of their methane because they declared everything a waste. So they basically have banned flaring and venting, and that's what allows us to get to that 98%. And so I bring all this up because all of this, in terms of the conversation and how it's changed, this has made the entire state, frankly, just more environmentally friendly. Again, we don't flare like we used to be able to, because before it was the flaring and venting was largely unregulated. And so now what we find ourselves with is a production base in New Mexico that has half the emissions from the Texas side. And these rules are actually starting to work, and now that they're implemented, and by the end of 2026, all operators will have to be at that 98%. So two things that we're doing at Coterra, because now basically the state's got the framework, the right rules in place to reduce waste and emissions. And so now there are a couple of things that are more down at the operator level that we're implementing. One of them is grid power. So we have a challenge in Eddy and Lee County where we don't have access to the grid, but we have all this production base. And so we've started to build microgrids where we're going to generate our own power behind the meter. And so recently we signed a contract, Coterra, for 50 megawatts of power. We already have 30, and we're expecting to be generating over 100 megawatts of power by 2030. So but we're doing this because we can no longer wait for the grid to catch up to us. But we're also doing it because it's good for the environment. Right now we're generating electricity with diesel engines and diesel generators with dozens, if not hundreds of them around the basin. And bringing this behind the meter allows us to be more efficient and reduce our emissions in half. So that's one thing we're doing. The other thing I wanted to highlight is, as part of the big, beautiful bill, I don't know who named that bill that, but that's a crazy name for a bill. But one of the provisions in the big, beautiful bill was a commingling provision that applied to the oil industry. And one of the things that allows operators to do is combine our production when it comes from multiple leases and multiple mineral interests. One of the unique things about New Mexico is that it's a checkerboard state, federal mineral ownership. And before, we used to have to build facilities for the production that came from the state minerals, and then we had to go build facilities for the production that came from the federal lease. And so with this rule, as it's being implemented, those are things that we're going to start building these things more efficiently and become better stewards of the environment and reduce our emission and environmental footprint largely with that new rule. So we're looking forward to the implementation of that.
That's great. And Megan, why don't you weigh in?
Yeah, Heather, the way we think about investment in Chevron for the industry for the future is we believe in our purpose, which is to enable human progress by providing energy that is affordable, reliable, and ever cleaner. And so when we think about how we prioritize our investments, we start with that framework. It's got to be affordable, reliable, and ever cleaner. And so our first dollars go to things that impact us today. Where can we keep methane in the pipe? Where can we improve our operational efficiency and effectiveness? And then we start to think about electrification, but we've got to be selective on the electrification. We don't want to solve one problem by creating another problem, and the grid isn't ready in all locations for it. And so we want to selectively electrify. That helps us also with improving our operational efficiency. And then finally, I think you talked about carbon capture. That's a longer-term solution. It's absolutely something that we invest in. We were one of the first to do carbon capture in Australia. And then we also have a project in the Gulf Coast. And we look at selective investment in that for the long term. I think when we think about the trade-offs, we don't like to think about it as an either-or. We've got to do it all, but we got to think about it on a timeline. You invest in the real things, then your first dollars go to that, and what you can do today. and you also invest in the longer term to enable the economy for the future. So you've got to think about all of it, but deliver the real impact now. It's got to be affordable for the world. We heard that this morning and for the state. And if it's not affordable energy, we will lose public trust quickly. So invest today and keep it affordable.
No, it's great. And I think that that really gives us a broader lens from an investment perspective. And so from there, I'd like to bring it down to the operator level and ask what it looks like in practice, especially from the standpoint of what's real and scalable today versus something that we would look at in the long term. So Megan, my question for you is, as the energy landscape evolves, reliability and competitiveness remain non-negotiable. From Chevron's perspective, which lower carbon strategies in oil and gas are most practical and scalable now? And how do you distinguish between what is real and financeable today versus what is still long-term?
Yeah. So when we think about what we can invest in today, and some practical examples, is on the operator efficiency. How do we do less or do more with less? And so there are things that we have electrified our rigs, but we've also focused on being extremely effective and efficient with our rigs. And so the same amount of drilling activity we used to do in the past is done by, I don't know, 30% less rigs, if not more. And so we have a lot less activity, a lot less consumption, and we're able to do it much more effectively and efficiently. I think another area we spend a lot of focus on is in the methane detection and the methane release prevention. So Hugo talked about the flaring, but also when we think about compression equipment out in the field, and back in the past, when you blew down compressors, it would blow down to atmosphere. And now we work with our suppliers, we work with our partners and other businesses on how do we capture that when we need to depressure a compressor, keep it in the pipe and not release it to atmosphere. So a lot of the things we can do today that is scalable and practical has to do with keeping us efficient today, effective in how we operate, and keeping that methane in the pipe.
No, it's great. And that practical operator perspective is important, but these decisions, as we know in this room, aren't made in a vacuum. They're also shaped by policymakers and communities and the broader public conversation around energy affordability and environmental performance. So, Hugo, my question for you is, from the standpoint of the government and external affairs perspective, how is that conversation shifting around lower carbon oil and gas, particularly as policymakers, communities, and operators all weigh reliability, affordability, environmental performance, and economic value all at the same time?
I think that we've got basically the cleanest oil and gas in the world here because of those rules that Governor Lujan brought forward. We can think of no other place that has the regulations and requirements that this state has. And so I think one of the things that we've got happening here this year is we've got an election here, a gubernatorial election, and it's our hope that one of the things that comes as a result of this is that we continue, whoever is elected governor, they continue the policies that have allowed this industry to double its production. Since Governor Lujan was elected in 2019, the production in New Mexico has gone from approximately 1 million barrels a day to 2 million barrels a day today. And so one of the things that I think would be success in our world would be electing somebody that continues these policies, to continue to promote this clean oil. One of the best ways right now in this era that we're in now, with the war in Iran, et cetera, energy security has never been more important. It really isn't just a cliche. It's something real. And I think one of the best ways to prosecute oil tyrants around the world is to give them competition. And I think that one of the things that New Mexico brings is that ability, a powerhouse delivery on energy that can produce 2 million barrels a day. And we, of all people here in New Mexico, need to be proud of that and continue policies that continue to allow us to invest our money in the state and allow us to continue to grow the production.
No, that makes total sense. And we've talked about now the strategy and the external landscape. So now let's turn to execution, because ultimately progress depends on what can actually be implemented on the ground in ways that improve performance without adding unnecessary complexity. So this is also where better data, many of you in this room know I am a data evangelist, stronger analytics, yeah, and practical digital tools can make a real difference, helping operators see problems early, prioritize maintenance, and improve performance in the field. So Megan, let's circle back with you. A lot of this conversation comes down to execution in the field, but from your perspective, how are stronger data visibility, better maintenance, prioritization, and practical digital tools helping operators improve production, deploy crews more effectively, and support lower carbon outcomes without overcomplicating operations?
It's interesting you say overcomplicating. When I think of data, I get overwhelmed because we have so much data in everything we do. And sometimes it makes it complex, but for us, it's really about clarity that the data can provide. So we use, in a lot of the industry and the operators in the Permian Basin use integrated operation centers, which are like control rooms where we can see all of the data real time on our assets. And our operators are able to better react to those anomalies that they may be seeing when historically we would just run people all over the state trying to address anomalies. Anybody, just by show of hands, how many folks have been out to Southeast New Mexico and the Permian? Okay, it's a good group. If you haven't, I encourage you to go. It is like nothing you've ever seen before, the amount of industry that's out there. But what's fascinating is for us, a lot of our sites are at shortest an hour away from each other, longest up to 2 hours. So if we had to send an operator to an abnormal condition at a site that was different than what they were working on, it could take 2 hours of that abnormal condition continuing before somebody could get to that location. And so having that data and that visibility in our integrated ops centers has been really game-changing for us. And we took field personnel out of the field and brought them into the integrated ops center. And so they bring their expertise and they're looking at things in a different way. Another thing you talked about was the maintenance prioritization. That is incredibly important to us to prioritize based on real impact and risk rather than everything is urgent at the same time. Just due to how far things are for us to operate, getting that prioritization is incredibly important, and it helps us stay very efficient and focused on our high-risk areas. And then can you remind me what the last part of it was that you mentioned? Tools, practical tools.
Yes.
So practical tools are hard to do. I think a lot of times, we have tool creators that are making tools with the intent to be practical in the field, but they don't necessarily test it in the field with field personnel. So we love practical tools that enable the field to execute more efficiently. However, we recommend that they are tested real time in the field, because the one thing you can do to lose the confidence in your operators is giving them a tool that they can't use. So there are real opportunities for us to continue to improve our operational efficiency through data, through prioritization, and through the right tools. We just got to make sure that they actually make an impact on the front line.
This is like an episode at a Landman.
Yes, something like that.
And that naturally leads, joking aside, to the broader ecosystem, though, for operators.
Yeah.
And if better execution is where so much value is being created, then suppliers and service partners also have an important role to play. So, Megan, I just want to dig in a little deeper here. As that work advances, where do you see the most practical opportunities for suppliers and service partners, including small businesses, to contribute in meaningful ways?
Yeah, so I think, small businesses and suppliers and partners, we love our suppliers and partners. We know, and Patrick spoke to it, we can't do this alone. We need to partner with small businesses, with our suppliers. That's where a lot of the innovation happens, and the opportunity helps us deliver. I think the opportunity really is around doing that lower carbon, that affordable, reliable within your businesses. So make the work that you do incredibly efficient and reliable, but bring those to the table and be, where I've seen businesses be very successful is where they have a niche and they're really good at it. And they help to provide that niche to make the larger business or the other partner be even better. So really dig in on that opportunity for you, be as efficient and reliable as you can, and look for those opportunities around carbon reduction, around keeping methane in the pipe, and operational efficiency. That's a great place to get in at this stage.
That's great. Well, time flies when you're having fun, and so we're about to wrap up. And so I'd like to use this last question to really look toward the future and have you both weigh in. And not in a perfect end state, but what does meaningful progress actually look like over the next several years? So if you could look ahead in 5 years, what would success realistically look like for this sector? Hugo, I'll let you start.
Thank you. So one of the biggest frustrations I've had in the decades that I've worked here is the disconnect between the majority of the population of the state in the Albuquerque-Santa Fe corridor and the disconnect with the oil and gas producing regions of the state. And I think that one of the things that we're challenged with at Coterra is hiring New Mexicans. And so in hiring people in state that are trained in state. And so looking forward in 5 years, success to me would look like, would see us with a measurable increase in the number of New Mexicans that are directly employed in this industry. I don't think there's enough of them.
Especially in leadership.
That's correct.
Especially in leadership roles.
And even in a shameless plug, at Coterra, we've been challenged again with hiring local people and for them being properly trained. Last session, we were pleased to work with Senator George Munoz, the Finance Committee Chair in the Senate, to introduce House Bill 260, which would create a program modeled after Pennsylvania, where employers and job creators and hyperscalers would be able to contribute money directly to trade schools and community colleges so that we can take a bigger role in training New Mexicans and ultimately hiring them here in New Mexico. And so that would, to me, would be success in 5 years, is more New Mexicans in the New Mexico oil and gas workforce.
I love that. Megan?
I love it too. I would love and long for the day where people aren't surprised by the fact that a Hispanic New Mexican is leading the New Mexico operations for Chevron. I'd love more of that to happen, and so I totally agree with you, Hugo. I think on a broader perspective too, though, is I think a more balanced conversation about the energy mix that we need. That's where we need to be. We need to be making real progress today on lowering our carbon intensity here in New Mexico, in the United States, around the world, but we need a more balanced conversation, and we've been hearing about that all morning. We can't lose sight of the affordability and the reliability side of this equation. The demand continues to increase, the reliability cannot decrease, and the affordability cannot increase. We will lose the public, and we will stall our own growth here in New Mexico and in the United States. So I think it's about that balanced conversation. More New Mexicans in STEM, more Hispanics in STEM. We have the grit, we have the work ethic. We got to get into STEM and help change this conversation for the benefit of the state and the benefit of the United States.
What a great way to end this. So thank you to our panelists for the amazing, candid, and practical perspective today. I think just to tie a big bow on all of this, this conversation made clear that the opportunity in front of the sector is not just about setting ambition, but about making smart choices now.
That's right.
And those choices that are strengthening operations, supporting competitiveness, and advance lower carbon outcomes in ways that are workable in the real world. And that progress will flow out of discipline, execution, practical investment, and a clear view of what is actually working in the field. So to my panelists, thank you so much for being a part of our panel, and to the audience for being part of this important discussion today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.